All right. Well, welcome everyone. Happy New Year to all. Welcome to Impolite Company on the WGCPR.live network, where we defy the old adage, dive headfirst into religion and politics. You know, those things you were never supposed to talk about in polite company. That's where the name of the show comes from, Impolite Company, because clearly if we're going to talk about religion and politics, we can't be polite company. So anyway, I'm your host, Matthew Best, getting over a little bit of a chest to throat thing, so hopefully my voice holds up. And we're going to have some honest dialogue, because that's what we do. Highlight the humanity of people. And if you got questions, comments, all that type of stuff, you can send those to contactimpolitecompany@gmail.com. You can find previous episodes and click subscribe and all that kind of great stuff through popular podcast channels like iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and you can find us on YouTube as well. Just look for Impolite Company in the logo that's behind me there. You can dive further into topics if you go to my blog, which is pastormatthewbest.com. I love to write, and I don't hold back in my writing. So there it is. And if you enjoy what we're doing and you want to support the show, everything that is given gets turned right back into the show. It's buymeacoffee.com/Impolite Company. And before getting into the show, I always like to highlight a couple of things, kind of personal privilege, since I don't really have sponsors, so I get to highlight these things. One is you can show some love to Christ Lutheran Church, the church that I am called to serve. It's a unique congregation in the heart of Allison Hill, which is the most economically challenged section of Harrisburg. And we offer 3 free health clinics. We host 3 free health clinics that serve a whole lot of folks. Certainly in this neighborhood, but as far away as Philadelphia, people have come to utilize some of the health clinics that we have available. Since 2018, we have had over 100,000 visits. So you can go to christharrisburg.org to check out the church. We just did this a couple of weeks ago, Memorial Blanket Project. It was in Philadelphia. It was incredible. Hundreds and hundreds of blankets, one from Australia, one from Germany, from all across the country, laid out in front of the Liberty Bell. It was an incredible experience. It was frigid. It was cold. We were glad to have blankets that day, and really trying to highlight the importance around the issue around homelessness. And all the blankets were given away. Next year, we're going to be doing this in Denver, Colorado. So you can go to memorialblanket.org, find out more. And lastly, if you're looking for a tool to help you with difficult conversations, there's a book one of the authors, originator of, called American Roulette. It's about a mass shooting. Doesn't provide answers. The idea is to provide conversation and to see the humanity in people. So you can find that anywhere that you get books. All right, today I am thrilled for a number of reasons. Number one, because Carla is just an awesome person. And Carla, do you realize that you are my first guest that is a return guest? So it is quite an honor. You. In fact, you're now averaging coming on my show at least once a year, because you're the first guest of 2025. So I am thrilled to have the Reverend Carla Christopher back on the show. She serves as the assistant to the bishop in both Lower Susquehanna Synod and the Delaware Maryland Synod. Really focuses on, I don't know when you sleep, but focuses on a variety of justice issues. Does a lot of training. You are a poet. You are just an incredible person. And I'm so glad that you are in my life, because you have been very helpful to me in so many ways. So Carla, thank you so much for being with us today. Right. Mm. Yeah. Right. Oh, that is an understatement in so many different ways. In a congregation, so I'm like the oddball in this congregation because of I'm white straight guy, uh, and in this congregation, Christ Lutheran Church, the people, all the people that you just named are a part of this congregation, and there's been a lot of concern in the last couple of months. This is the best way to, in a nice way to put it. Um, that whole idea you're talking about, a lot of pastoral care. Yeah, there's been a ton of pastoral care and no answers, of course, because we're all like, we have no idea what's going to happen. We know what's happened in the past, but you never know. There's so much uncertainty, which is so very interesting because today what we did was we did the Epiphany reading, and Matthew 2:1-12, and it's the story of the Magi or the wise men or whatever you want to call them, coming in, and they're coming to Herod, and the contrasts are so interesting. I preached about fear and joy, right? And because that's in the story, that is the element of this story, is fear and joy. Herod is a fearful person. It says it right in there, and that when he's afraid, the whole of Jerusalem is afraid. And there's these outsiders that come. It's the outsiders and the insiders, right? There's all these contrasts there in the story. It's really incredible. and they're just coming, and of course they go to the capital, Jerusalem, because that's where else would a king be but in the capital, right? And Herod's like, well, what are you talking about? And he's afraid. He's got all this power, but yet he's serving Rome. So what kind of power does he have? It's all just this farce all around, and he's a small, fearful person who creates fear. And when the wise men get to actually finding Jesus, and it's been a couple of years since the actual birth, it says they were overwhelmed with joy, and in the midst of that fear, and we know that immediately after that passage, then Matthew talks about the slaughter of the innocents, because it's the fear that drives to violence and cruelty and all this type of stuff. So this is a little kind of, there's my sermon, sorry. Yeah, absolutely. So the biggest reason why I wanted to have you come back, and this started in a messenger thread after I went to one of the trainings that you did on racial justice, which was an incredible training, and I think, or it was a LGBTQ training, and it was such a great um, training. I don't think training's not even the right word. Um, but I had mentioned, I think what I had said to you was you humanized this whole thing. You humanized this. So it wasn't an issue. This is about people and trying to get an understanding of people, right? And these are people that happen to be LGBTQ, and it's important for us who are not to have an understanding of how somebody, like what's going on in their brain, what's going on in their body, what's going on, to get an understanding, which has been such a rare thing. And one of the things that you had said was you had talked about that about the acceptance of LGBTQ folks in the church. And you had mentioned it was something like 10% of churches. And I don't remember if it was worldwide or in the United States. But that just caught my attention. And I was like, whoa, what? And I had to step back and think about like, okay, here I am like surrounded by like, there's just acceptance. And then, yeah, right, there's a whole lot of the world that is not in that state. And for a long time, that has not been the case. That this is kind of recent, that there have been churches who have been more affirming and accepting. So that's what I wanted to have you come in and talk a little bit about. Maybe you could start a little bit with where did that number come about? What does it really mean? Right. Yeah. Sure. Right. Yeah. 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 This is, oh my gosh. It's just firing off a million things going through my head, right? Like there's the simple question, which is, well, gee, why is this? Well, okay, it's complex, and we don't have, like, a full semester to even start to scratch the surface on this, right? But it goes through, like, right now I'm reading the 1619 project, right? And I even mentioned that in the sermon. And the thing that's so striking about that, and I think this relates very much with what we're talking about, is when you start to understand the history, you have this broader sense of, like, this has been going on for a long time, and there's this there's so many complexities that fit into this, and then that's not counting the effects that come because of what was originally yeah, going into things. So, like, for example, what the chapter I just finished reading in the 1619 project was talking about politics, and it was talking about how, because of everything around trying to protect slavery as an institution, and the idea of protecting property, we're using that term very broadly in order to cover human and non-human property, that the impact of that going down to this day still has an impact, where you have, like, Supreme Court decisions on what was it, like Citizens United, can be traced back to this whole idea of property and profit and all this type of stuff having this kind of being so very foundational, but also just having the preference on that in that, right? So I think about this in terms of what we're talking about with what the church and you were talking about the general population and the separation between that. I mean, that's a huge divide. 10% versus over 50%. And I just think, I'm like, when did the church, and maybe it's always been this way, when did the church go from taking folks who are outcasts of society and making them outcasts in society? Right. Yeah. Right. Right. Mm-hmm. Right. 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 Oh yeah. Yeah. Hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. 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 Yeah. I mean, that's yeah. I don't want to. I don't want to add anything to that because I think what you just said is just so very insightful, and um, it's just got me thinking about the church. Oftentimes seems stuck. I think is the best way to describe where it is in so many different categories. In one sense, the church is in a survival mode um, because it feels, for a variety of different reasons, maybe it feels threatened, maybe it feels like out of control, maybe it feels like the center has shifted and it's no longer the same. Maybe it's because, well, gee, the young people aren't around. It's not continuing the same pattern that people have experienced in the recent past. I don't say the past because this is the reality that most people think that history started when they were born and it'll end when they die. And so that's certainly true in the church. That when I think a huge mistake we talk about is when we talk about, oh, the church was always this way, maybe in the last 70 years or something, but not before that. I mean, what about all this other history that we have? Um, so I'm just trying to think through, like, we've got a church that's stuck in many ways, trying to figure out who it is, what is the church, because this is a time of significant cultural change for the church and how the church operates, what it looks like, how it's organized. All that stuff is in the death process of what it was into birthing into something new. which we don't know what that is. In some ways, it's reminding me of when cars came out. They were called horseless carriages because they didn't have a word for it. They just knew, right? Well, before, there were carriages led by horses, and now this is a carriage that doesn't have a horse. They didn't know what to call it until somebody, probably Henry Ford, came up with the term or something. I don't know, whatever. But I feel like that's kind of where the church is in so many areas. We're in the horseless carriage stage of things. That things are changing. There's something new. We don't know what it is. We don't know what it looks like. We don't know how this is going to turn out, even in the next 5-10 years. It's this unknown state. And so there's a lot of people that are kind of like what you had just described, that they can't even think, they can't act, they can't do, because the world has been, it's uncertain, and humans don't like uncertainty. And so I'm wondering, how can the church, I don't even know what the right question is. How can the church be an ally when it's struggling itself to just know what it is? I don't even know if that question makes sense. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. Right. 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 Yep. Got it. Yeah. Right. 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 Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned the word early church, and everything you just described sounds, to the best of our knowledge. um, which in one sense is a bit radical because it's countercultural, right? Everything that you just talked about is countercultural because it's a long-term investment of relationship with long-term attention in a culture that has, such a short attention span. I think this is part of the reason why things like, you know, fights over who gets to use what bathroom comes up now, because it doesn't require a lot of thinking. It doesn't require a lot of attention. It's just an emotional, quick response to a perceived fear. There's some kind of fear underlying that. I think that's part of what's there, right? Somebody has this fear that they're going to be attacked, or someone they loved is going to be attacked, right? That's that's the right, right, whatever, right. So there's some kind of fear that's underlying it, and it's a quick, oh well, if we just ban this, then that takes care of that fear, and it's this kind of like easy solution, if you want to call it that, without thinking through the ripple effect, the consequences of, like, hey, these are people. This isn't an issue. These are people, right? This is where we get so many problems, I think, in our society and in the church, is when we focus on things as issues as opposed to these are people's lives, right? An issue is abstract. It doesn't impact a single person because it's abstract. So we don't think about the impact it has on people. We're thinking about how do we make ourselves feel good, and that's it. The people who are arguing those type of things, not thinking about the impact, the ripple effect, or anything. It's just, well, if we just ban this, then that takes care of it, and it goes away, and we don't have to deal with it anymore. It's the same thing with like book bans or any type of ban, if you want, right? It's the same. Like, I'm thinking about, like, was it the I don't remember which member was recently elected. I think a trans woman who was elected to Congress, and one of the first things that has been done was again saying, oh, you can only go to the bathroom if you're this, that, and the other thing, and it's like, so this doesn't. First of all, it doesn't. You're trying to. There's so many things to say about that, but like this, what problem does this solve? And if you really want to do something about this, then just make all the bathrooms single use, and then there's no problem anymore. You just make single use bathrooms, and then it doesn't matter. Like, just like, why do we make things so complicated? But yes, right. 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 Of course. Yeah. Yep. Mm. Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm. Nice. Ah. Okay. Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm. Right. Yeah. this is why I often talk about the idea of shalom is the kingdom of God. Um, it's not. I don't hear a whole lot of folks, but I hear some other folks talk about this as well. And this is the where people have this misunderstanding of what shalom is. To me, when Jesus is talking about the kingdom of God or the kingdom of heaven, he's talking about shalom. And a lot of folks are thinking, oh, shalom, that's just that Hebrew peace greeting. No, it's far more. Shalom is wholeness, it's completeness, it's enoughness, right? So you just kind of get that whole sense of there doesn't need to be anything more, because otherwise how would it be whole, right? And it's reminding me of there was a meme or something that I saw which was talking about somebody came to a history class and said that the history we were taught could not produce the results that we have, which right, man, I'm like, holy cow, if that's not, this is why I keep it right on my computer, because I'm like, that's what, for me, I'm like, right, this is the difference between shalom and whatever is not shalom. This is what we have to be about, is I talk about shalom, I talk about the imago Dei, which is the image of God, seeing the image of God in all others, because how else would it be shalom if you're not seeing it in all others? This is where I talk about like life, death, resurrection, all the things that you're talking about. It keeps coming back to me as far as like, we are called to life, death, and resurrection, and the church has this fear of death. It has a fear of death, and that could be literal closure or literal shutting down of denominational structures and all that type of stuff. But honestly, I don't think it requires all of that. I think it's just the death of trying to control it, of I'm in charge. That has to die so that resurrection can happen. And resurrection is not something that we're in control of. This is why it's resurrection, because it's God who does it. It's not us, right? To me, I get into this thing of like death serves a very important purpose. And that important purpose is it gets in our face and we cannot look away from it. And it tells us you are not in control. That's what death does. And that happens it's supposed to happen on a daily basis. This is, for me, all the stuff that you're talking about, and I wish I had more time, but I only got 5 minutes left. All this stuff just centers back to those three themes for me that you're talking about. And I'm so glad that you put it in both a faith and a civic, secular format, because I think it is this kind of combination of the two, right? One informs the other. Which one first? Well, depends on where people are coming from, I guess, but they inform each other. They have to. It's not these compartments. I think that's a big challenge that we have in the church, is for the sake of keeping things the way they are, we think that we have these compartments. Now, there's a difference between like Christian nationalism, which is one trying to control the other, versus informing and working together in a type of shalom, that type of thing. Anyway, like I said, I'm going to stop there because there's only 4 minutes, and I so desperately wanted to ask you about like the documentary 1946, because I saw that like last year, and I'm like, I wanted to ask you like, how much do you think this kind of plays into this in the church? But we don't have time for all that. So in 3 minutes, do you have last thoughts? Maybe wonderful, there's no quick solution. You already talked about this. There's no like magic bullet. This is the thing that I think is really important for us to really kind of grasp as a church. Like, I think there's all these like programs that go out there of this is going to fix your church if you do this. Well, no, the church is the people, and people are messy, and there is no quick fix. That is just there, there's no, where all the listicles out there, right? Like, oh, do these 10 little things. Doesn't exist. None of it. So in 2 minutes time, can you offer a word of hope? Hmm. Right. Thank you very much, Carla. You are a gem, and I mean that in such wonderful ways, because you are so valuable and beautiful in so many different ways. So thank you so much for coming on the show again, and I'm sure I'll have you back on again. We'll talk about something else.